All right. This is really seriously one of the most electrifying end games I have ever seen from Magnus Carlsen. He's playing Aryan Tari, who is the number two rated Norwegian in the world and of Norway. And they're good friends. And they're playing this in one of the tournaments. Uh, Carlsen's playing the white. His friend Tari is playing the black. Let's see how they do this. It's a queen pawn opening, knight f6, and the c4. So we've got the queen pawn opening, and he's going to bump the e6. He's going gentle at first, and Carlsen, of course, brings his knight out, and immediately, yes, the famous pin, the bishop b4. So how do you handle this pin? Because this move occurs in many different multitudinous openings. Let's see how Carlsen does it. He first solidifies his center while Tari will castle, which is a good move. And then he stops the pin by producing the bishop on the same angle. Atari is going to, I call him Atari, I meant Tari, is going to bump the c5 to put pressure on the center. Now, notice that the tension is usually always built up in the beginning, and Carlsen is not going to immediately worry about the center at this point. It's pretty secure. He's going to ask the bishop what he want to do. Now, of course, he's not going to be able to go back. That causes all kinds of serious problems. So he is going to take it rather than go back, which is the best way to do this. And the bishop will take. So Carlsen has the bishop pair, and Tari immediately properly comes right up there and hits the hole at e4 with the knight. Good centralization of the knight. Very good game so far. Carlsen is going to continue bringing up his pieces, and he's challenging Tari. He's saying, look, if you're going to take the bishop, I'm not going to double up my pawns. I don't want to double my pawns in this game. I'm going to retake with the knight. I'm going to keep my pawn structure. And as we all know by now, Carlsen is an animal with the pawns. There's no question about it. Tari simply solidifies the center so that he doesn't lose the pawn at all. That would be a bad thing. So he doesn't do that. And now, rather than relieve the tension through the exchange, Carlsen's going to bump the pawn forward, gaining more space and hitting the e pawn. Now, now the tension begins to build. Tari will bring up the bishop further development, and Carlsen says, okay, either exchange or go. It's your call. And he does take the bishop. So now neither one of them have the bishop pair, which is the way it works. Knight will take. And now the bishop will take the c4 pawn. So one of the important central pawns, the central pawn is bumping up this advanced pawn. That has been taken out. And now the question is, are there going to be bishops in this game at all? The question is really going to change the character of this game if Carlsen exchanges the bishops, which he does. So the move, of course, which Carlsen saw, kind of a nifty little tactic if you want to remember this. It's a way to develop with tempo another piece, the queen on the h, and then check the king and zip over there and take the bishop. Of course, Carlsen saw that. And so he bumps the g3, and now the queen zings over here to remove the bishop. So Carlsen, his pawn structure is really interesting. Each one of the pawns on the king side, now he has not castled yet, against the number two rated player in Norway. This is pretty good. This is pretty confident chess. Each one of the pawns have bumped up, and now he's going to produce the h4, which, if he needs to, in a pinch, he's got a little bit of an advance to throw pawns up against the castled king. As it is, for now, And this is so basic to understand. And some of us kind of get edgy. We kind of start freaking out. We say, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. That queen, she's getting mighty close to my king. And the backyard professor and everybody else has always told me I have to castle early, but dadgummit, I haven't had a chance to castle the king yet. What do I do about that queen? And we start getting nervous. The queen by herself is not going to checkmate. No. So, yes, he's got the development. It's not anything to break a sweat over, however, and that's why the H4 works perfectly well. And now the E does take the D5 central advanced pawn. So in a way, we can see how that brings down the space advantage of Carlsen, right? Tari now has a doubled central pawn, yet the front pawn is serving an exquisite function of not only gaining space, but keeping track of key central squares along with the queen, along with the diagonal. So that is not a bad setup for black. Now, it's not, the queen being in the center doesn't mean she's attacking anything, but that's a decent location for at this point because there have been some exchanges. So she's not as much of a target, we'll put it that way for now. Yet, properly so, the knight will also retake that very important central pawn. And that makes sense. You don't want to let him build up a center. Technically speaking, see, Carl has not advanced toward the center. He is controlling some really exquisite central squares, but it's contested with this magnificent location of the queen. So there's no point in letting Tari have that pawn when he can take it. So this makes sense, and now this gives Tari a chance to bring out yet another piece. And again, hitting the center. That's always a theme. It's always going to be a theme in every one of our games. So now the issue is this, and we begin to see now that the queen is advanced far enough. There still are, while there have been exchanges, there are still ways to attack the queen and make her a target with tempo. Now, this is really interesting because Carlsen is a pawn down. Have you noticed that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Carlsen is a pawn down. So gaining tempo by attacking the queen with his pawns makes sense. The queen is in his territory. She has crossed the frontier line into his territory. Okay, what do you attack? The nearest piece in your territory, the queen. So the pawn push makes good sense. That's all I'm saying. Now, Tari comes all the way back with queen a6 here because you can't do anything here and you've got no forward momentum. But the queen does retain that diagonal. She hasn't lost any power by retreating on that diagonal in any manner. We can see that, yeah. So knight is now going to give a beautiful fork. And this is really exquisite. One of the commentators said that the best move here is to lose the queen and pop the rook into this. Get more of the minor pieces for the queen. That's not what he did. He went queen a5. So here is an instructive moment as well. So Tari moved his queen out of danger, right? Carlsen doesn't have to immediately take that rook. And you say, well, but the thing is, the rook isn't pinned or tied down, really. If you don't take it right now, you're not going to get it taken, right? There is a stronger move. Continue trying to trap the queen. So Tari, even though he doesn't want to lose the rook, really doesn't want to lose the queen. And Carlsen has a way of maintaining the initiative, gaining tempo, advancing his positional pawns on the queen side, and potentially trapping Tari's queen. So keep pushing at the queen. That's the best target. This is a great target. That's a better one. Kind of a nifty little thing we're seeing here. So he goes b4, and of course the pawn will exchange. C takes b4, and now it's time to take the rook. And interestingly enough, the reason why now is, have you noticed the nifty little tactic that Tari has on Carlsen here? When he takes this pawn, he's got a discovered check, right? So notice this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Carlsen is now down 2 pawns. In an endgame, that's seriously significant. And Tari has an absolutely exquisite passed pawn here that is deep in Carlsen's territory, backed by the queen. Very interesting situation here. So we have a discovery. And now Carlsen says, okay, because of the nature of the board, like I just described, that passed pawn actually, it helps Carlsen realize, okay, we are in the end game, and it does need to be simplified. And one of the first things I need to do is get the queens off the board and eliminate that pawn. That pawn's too close. So now it is endgame time, but he's going into an endgame down pawns. It's really interesting how he does this. The queen does not exchange. Now, this is remarkable. You say, okay, well, hold on. And the queen does not worry about staying on the board either. What happens now is the rook goes ahead and eliminates the knight. One less piece to worry about, because the knight did have access to coming back out, right? So now is the time. Rather than exchange, go ahead and finish off taking the piece. Very interesting idea. So that makes Carlsen be the one who does exchange the pawn. Now, looking at the board, don't retake with the pawn. Man, you don't want 3 pawns on the A file. Don't retake it with the pawn. No, no, no. Let the knight take it without question. So here, now the rook will take the pawn. Observe, and it's going to be an interesting endgame for this reason too. The 4 pawns are the majority on this side. The isolated pawn in the center is going to be a target. The 2 pawns here are a good island. They're strong and they're unopposed. So technically, he's got 2 passed pawns. Tari does. So let's see, and the rook is behind the passed pawns. So let's see Tari bump those pawns down and nab his and get a new queen. This is a great setup for black. Yeah. So knight will come to c4, tickle the rook. The rook is going to come up here to a6 now, and you can see the thinking here. He's going to put pressure on the a pawn. Now we're in the end game. Carlsen is down. His position is not real good on this side with those pawns. He's down 2 pawns, and he's got 2 passed pawns to handle. Okay, so here's how he does this, which is really interesting. He even lets Tari take another central pawn, so he only has 3. He is down 3 pawns in this endgame. This is really interesting. It was more important for him and the reason why. These 2 are connected. In an endgame, man, if you can have 2 connected passed pawns and a piece behind him. And not only a piece, the proper piece. And you can get them moving down the board. That's just virtually, literally almost unstoppable. Carlsen is aware of this, so he is blockading this. Now, this is perfect Nimzovich style. Blockade the pawns. No question. Man, do not let those get mobile. No, not a chance. So this is really an interesting way how Carlsen is playing this, and now bringing the king into it, of course, the fighting piece. And the knight d5, at least keep your eye on this area. And here we go. Rook h to a1. And now there is tremendous pressure on the a pawn. What Carlsen recognizes, and this is a great lesson for us too, this whole side of the board is clear for the black pawns, so you have to eliminate this. And you're down that number of pawns. You're down 3 of those pawns, right? So you don't give him a chance to start advancing pawns. And you, of course, should not be concentrating on trying to get your pawns in. Oh no, you've got a huge problem over here. Take care of business. That's what we see Carlsen doing. The way he handles this is so cool. And now Tari does have to get his king out. This makes beautiful sense. And of the inevitable. We saw that. That's why he doubled the rooks. Yes. Take the pawn, and there is an exchange of the rooks. We take the rook, we take the rook. So we are in an end game with, it's very interesting that Tari has 2 pawns for the rook. He's got a bad minor piece compared to the rook, though, and he is ahead on pawns. This is going to be a tough one. If you bring your king into it, it is very, very helpful. And of course, he's going to attack the pawn. That makes sense. So Tari says, okay, let's at least get it going on the king side. Yes. And Carlsen says, yes, I agree. Let's do this. See, Carlsen is going to try to get a passed pawn of his own in case this one doesn't get taken, but it's obviously going to be taken because Tari can't just leave his knight there forever. He's going to have to use his knight in the endgame. So he's trying to get a passed pawn. Now, it's going to be a mistake to take. Man, do not take that G pawn. Tari plays this right. Bump that up. Yeah, if there's going to be an exchange, by all means, let him take you and then you take him so that there's no passed pawn. Okay, so good move by Tari. Rook b8, and now Carlsen. And the psychology here is good because now Carlsen's keeping his eye here. He recognizes Tari played the pawn over here correctly. Rather than taking, he's just having a standoff. So now his rook has an option of coming over to here too. The power of the rook compared to the knight. The knight takes 2 moves to get from side to side. The rook only takes 1. So Carlsen can keep his eye on both issues. Very good move. And here comes Tari, centralized king, superb place to put it. And of course, so when your opponent begins to bring the king, then you should match the king movement as you can as well with yours. You don't want to be caught way back here while his king's up here in the center. That's not good endgame chess. So that makes sense. Tari made a move, and now Carlsen does. So there we go. That's good chess right there. And this is so unfortunate. This was a blunder. Tari blundered putting the f5 because Carlsen's going to be able to bring the rook in here. He shouldn't have done it quite that way, and G will immediately take the f. He says, absolutely. Or no, I'm sorry, the H. Oh, I can't read my own handwriting. G will take the H. And G will take the H. So here we are. Now the rook can come to H8. this passed pawn is a passed pawn, but it's not very far up the board. So this gives Carlsen time to maneuver the rook and take care of business over here. And this is what's so important here. F4 is going to check the king, and he did this sequence of moves correctly too. Tari did. First, you want to push the king back. So check the king. The king can't come here because the pawn. So the king comes down. Oh, there's my heater. Hang on, I got to turn this down. Forgot to turn my heater down again. I do that every morning. Now that we're in the wintertime, holy cow, I've got to keep the heat up. And now the knight f6, because he wants to protect his pawn. But first, make sure the king is pushed out of the way so that the king doesn't take this pawn while the knight moves to protect this one. This one's under attack. There's no reason to let your opponent's king also attack that one. So this is why the sequence of moves was so very good with Tari. And now here comes Carlsen, king e2. And the way Carlsen plays this is so interesting. King will come to e5. Now, notice he doesn't gain the opposition with that move yet. They're putting the kings in there, but Tari did not gain the opposition yet. He's not close enough. And now, king d3, that allows Carlsen to keep coming up. And so what we need to do now in this endgame is keep everything together as much as possible, right? And so this is what Tari is doing with that pawn bump. Just keep the king able to protect the pawns, because we've got an outlier out here, and he wants his knight to protect that from the rook. So rook comes to h6. This is such a masterful use of the rook. This is why I wanted to show you this game. Carlsen, maintaining his pressure on the pawn, now puts pressure on the knight. Okay, so he's making the rook multitask. Yes. And Tari says, good move. I'm going to keep coming forward as I can. He's got pawns on both sides, which can be very, very beneficial. But notice how Carlsen has also split up the duties of defense. The king is over here. The rook is over there. So this is very good use of all pieces by both players. The king is here. The knight is helping here. So this is really getting tight. Very cool. Watch. He does not take the knight. He puts the rook in a maximal use position, gently improving his piece. This signals to Tari that, okay, now it is safe to begin to proceed pushing the B pawn one more. Tari wishes like crazy it was down here right now. It's not, but he wishes it was. And rook g5 check. He's going to try to split apart the island in the center that Tari has built up. Carlsen is going to systematically attempt to see if he can get some leverage. Let's see how he does. King e6, excellent move. King to c3. This was a master stroke of Carlsen. And you say it was just a king move, dude. No, it was not just a king move, dude. No. Had he done this, then the B pawn would have been able to make progress. Fundamentally so. Because you can't go there and you can't go there. You're in trouble, is what's going on. So he did this correctly by coming to here. That was an excellent move on his part. And now, knight d7, you got to come over. And now, because of the knight gave up guarding the pawn. What he's trying to do is make sure that he plays both sides of this board so that he can run one of these pawns in, because he has way more pawns than Carlsen. The trick is how to get Carlsen distracted or else spread too thin so that he can run one of these pawns in. Yes? Carlsen masterfully says, I'm not going to fall for that. So he comes back, and now the rook says, okay, let's see what happens. I have to. Carlsen is recognizing that if he does stretch me too thin, I really do run the risk of allowing one of those extra pawns in. So let's eliminate that issue. Notice how masterfully Carlsen plays both sides of the chessboard. This is so amazing. It's just mind-boggling. Here we go. B4. Rook A7. Rook A7. You saw that right. Knight G8. Rook A6. Check, because he didn't want it forked, or he didn't want it skewered, right? That's why he moved the knight out. Rook G6. Rather than move back, which would have been a fatal error, because then Carlsen would never have to take his rook off this again. Don't ever move your king back away from the pawns from a rook check, or you're never going to be able to get with your pawns to keep them protected. Carlsen or Tari did this right, moved the king forward toward the pawns. That is a very important endgame principle. And now that gives him one of the pawns, because he has included his king and his rook on both sides, and he is playing both sides of this board. Those pawns are still locked. So it's not as big a crisis for Carlsen to come back over here with the rook and angle it this direction. Carlsen may very well be doing exceptionally superb here. B3 keeps pushing. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. Yeah, that's inevitable. Knight E7 check. King E4. Sorry. King C4. Yeah, my C's and E's. I better take my glasses off. My C's and E's look like. Yeah, he definitely brought it to C4. I remember that. And now knight G6. So this gives Tari a chance to eliminate the pawn that's blockading his other pawn, because he sees the inevitable. He has lost his 2-pawn advantage in the endgame. Carlsen has played this magnificently. He's an animal, man. 2 pawns down, and you catch him. That's exquisite. Watch. This even shocked the commentators. Carlsen shocked us all. He takes the knight. He takes the knight. He didn't take the pawn because the king has control of the pawn. Or does it? He took the knight. And the king takes the rook. And the king takes the pawn. Amazing. And that's where he resigns. And you go, wait, let me get this straight. Carlsen was here, right? And the pawn was here. And he took the pawn one more square away from the side where all the pawns are. And Tari resigned. Yeah, Carlsen calculated out this endgame even before he took the knight with the rook. That's how good his mind is in chess. For instance, Tari can't come straight down here to get that pawn. So he comes to here. Carlsen comes to here. Now he can't come to here. So he comes to here, and Carlsen comes to here. So he can't come here, here, or here. So he goes, let me make sure I did this right. King c5, king e5. Oh, nope, I did that wrong already. Okay, sorry. Let me replay this because it's so good. Because after king f5, yeah, after he moves to f5, he's going to go to c4. And then e5, and then c5. There we go. That's the one I missed. So he's going to come back to f5, sorry, c5. Zeus, and he's going to come to d5. What he does is he chases the king back to where he can't come to here or here or here or there, and so he has to go up. And then he comes in for the kill. So Carlsen beat him out. Sorry, I messed up that last endgame analysis of why he resigned, but it's all good. It works. Fun game because who other than Carlsen can come from behind with such a strong grandmaster as an opponent from his own home country, 2 pawns down in the endgame and eliminate the pawns and still win the game. That's God chess as far as I'm concerned. That's why I wanted to show you this game. So Magnus Carlsen for the win again. The man is animal. He's fun to play through and he's fun to watch. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great weekend. Be good. Make lots of friends. Smile. Keep studying chess. We're growing. We're improving. We're having fun doing it, watching all these fantastic chess games. So I will catch up to you just as soon as I can shortly with more chess video game instructions as well as shorts. So we're making progress. Woohoo!